All right, we want to simplify the following to a form where we have a single trig function with no fractions. Okay, so we have some trig identities that may come into play. A common trig identity that kind of looks like the denominator is the Pythagorean identity. The following Pythagorean identity you may be familiar with. That is secant squared of t is equal to tangent squared of t plus 1. So you can see that we can subtract 1 from both sides of this trig identity and obtain the following. Tangent squared of t is equal to secant squared of t minus 1, right? Just by subtracting 1 on both sides. Okay? So with this Pythagorean identity, we can simplify this a bit and notice that secant squared of t over secant squared of t minus 1 is equal to secant squared of t over tangent squared of t, just substituting the trig identity that we've just obtained, that using the Pythagorean identity. All right, now let's work with this. Well, we can write it in the following form. Secant of t over tangent of t, all of that squared. Okay? So let's work inside those parentheses. What can we do with secant t and tangent t? Well, notice that you might want to, essentially I'm going to use this as scratch on the right side. Tangent of t is equal to sine over cosine, right? Sine of t over cosine of t. Okay, that might come in handy. Secant of t, well, we know that that is 1 over cosine. Again, I've mentioned this before in a separate video, but you want to work with the different identities that we know, the different trig identities, so that we obtain the same different trig functions like cosine. Notice I have cosine here and cosine here. And before we just had tangent and secant. So now that will be in a better form because potentially we'll be able to simplify it further if we have the same trig functions in there. So this would be equal to secant is 1 over cosine over sine over, sine over cosine, substituting for t. And it's still squared. We got to include that squared. But notice that that we can simplify this a bit. May not be obvious, but I mean, at this point, I would see this cosine here on the denominator and the cosine here on that denominator, and they'd be able to cancel out. But that may not be obvious to you. So let's break this down. So 1 over cosine of t divided by sine of t over cosine of t. And notice this is all still squared. Let's keep that there. And now we want to change that to a multiplication. So 1 over cosine of t multiplied by cosine of t. Now you should be able to see it can simplify. The cosine and the cosine will be able to cancel. And again, we're still squaring. So now that is equal to 1 over sine of t squared. And 1 over sine of t is cosecant. So that is equal to cosecant of t. Well, let me give it a little more space. Squared of t. There we go. And now we have just a single trig function as our solution. No fractions. And we are done. All right, please reach out if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to maybe break down a different problem you've seen that you want to see worked out. I'm more than happy to help with anything, going in depth in this problem or working on any other problem you have concerns about. So it's best to be prepared as much as possible for your final exam. And so, yeah, please do reach out before you take your exam or along the way as you complete your homework. I'm more than happy to help with anything that you have from the course. All right, happy studies.